Hi everyone, continuing from where I left you in the previous lecture. In this particular lecture, I will be telling you about the structure of the Android application. In addition, I will be using the Android Studio for developing the Android application, and I can also use Eclipse. I've also installed Eclipse, and I can also use that also for developing the Android application. So it depends upon your choice, and it's it's just um, a matter of your personal interest. You can use any of these applications. I'm using the Android Studio. It is an Intel EJ platform based so it is powered by the Intel EJ platform based editor IDE. In fact, it is an integrated development environment. You can develop the Android application using this application. It takes a bit long to start, so I guess I must pause it for a few minutes. So it's it will take a bit long, so I'm pausing it for a while. I will come back once it gets started. So so now let's begin with a new fresh application, and for that reason you need to click over here, start a new Android Studio project. So it is a project which we are going to create. So just finger clicking it, it's actually and it's the application name. Let it be some arbitrary name. Let the serial of the application be its name, so that we can remember that which application we created in which particular uh, means video, so which sequence. Okay, so application 1, this is the first application, and let's go to next. We will be developing around 20 plus applications. So as I've told you that what it does is that it uses a minimum, it chooses a minimum SDK. Over here by default it is using the API 21. So API 21 is the application programming interface label used for Android 5.0, also known as the Lollipop. So any application which we will develop using this particular uh, minimum API level will run over all the operating versions of the Android which are over 21 and above. That means, so the 22nd version and the 23rd version also would be able to execute and run the application which are developed by setting a minimum SDK level of API 21. So now let's click on next. uh, so now I will begin with a blank activity. So I told you that activity is a single screen. So this screen will appear like this, and there would be a symbol over here like this, so and an arrow symbol like this. So all this will be you will be able to understand all this, that what all this is, and the code behind all this when we begin with the program. So activity name, so actually it is the first activity which is going to be created. By default it names the activity as the main activity, and the layout of that particular activity is the activity underscore main. So I've told you that there is a particular XML file associated, so that would also be covered. So the title will be the main activity. We can also change the title of the activity, but right now we are not changing anything. And suppose we just click over the finish to finish things up. So it might take about a minute or so, because it's a heavy IDE. The Gradle build is Gradle which builds the application package. So So you can see that there is this main activity.java file which is being created, and there is this context underscore main.xml. If we talk about the structure of the application, you can see that there is this app, and in the app we have the manifest, we have the Java files, we have the resources, we have the drawables. In the resources we have the drawables, the layout, the menu, the MIP map, and the values. So let's see that what these things are. First of all, as we can see that in the layout, by default there are two XML files that have been created. The first is the content underscore main .xml. So this is the XML file which is actually they are appearing right now on the IDE. And there, in addition, there is also an activity underscore main.xml. So if you see, then you can understand that actually there are two ways we can view this particular XML file, either in the text view or in the design view. So if I click over here and I want the design view, and so what will happen is that how the activity is going to appear, we can see that how the activity or the particular screen is going to appear. So it is taking a quite bit, and sometimes there are certain rendering errors that occur, but hopefully we will fix those errors if in case they occur. And you can see that it is the end, so actually it is picking up the best version. So what happens is that it is picking up the latest version, but there are certain things which are not installed yet. But if I click over here and I use the 6.0 version, then hopefully actually this rendering problems occur because of the theme. If the theme is not appropriate, and then these rendering problems will occur. Now you can see that this screen is appearing, and it shows that the application will look like this particular activity of the application will look like this particular page. So page in not page, but we can say that the particular activity. So if you see, and then you can have the look over here, and you can view that there is hello world written over here by default. So if we create a particular blank activity by default, then there is this particular application, this particular activity of an application with the hello world written. So this shows that the application is almost initiated. And now what we need is that we are going to customize the application, and we are going to make some application of our own. So let's see that how is it going to work. First of all, let's see that what is the difference between the content underscore main.xml and activity underscore main.xml. If you click over here, content underscore main.xml, actually the earlier versions of the Android Studio didn't create the in the earlier versions of the Android Studio and earlier versions which were there of the APIs used to create a single file that was the activity underscore main.xml. So if you are going through the internet and you are searching and you are trying to develop things, then it might be that you might find these things a bit difficult initially, because over here we have the two files instead of one file. You can see that there is layout activity main included over here at this particular line. So actually the content main has the tools and show in the layout. I will tell this all this to you once we begin, and you can see that this particular look like this. So if we are going to the design view of any of these particular XML file, then hopefully we are going to get the same view. But if we are going to drag drop a particular view, actually all these things which we used to call components in the Swing application development in Java, if you've gone through my swing swing lectures, then you might be knowing that these are the components which we drag and drop upon the frame or the applet. So means these are the components. So over here we call all these as the view. So if we want to use any of this, so we need to single click it and we need to drop it over here. So you can see that the content underscore main.xml is actually we are able to position it to somewhere. We are actually able to drop this somewhere over here. So I'm just undoing this, and I'm going to try the same thing over here. So activity underscore main, if I'm going to click it over here and I'm going to drop it over here, then it is not going to work in the same way. So this is the difference. If you want to drag and drop certain components, then come to the content underscore main.xml file and then drop it over here. So you can see that this is a particular component. In Android, we can say that it is a particular view. So this is a particular view which we are using. Actually, we can so if you see that it's quite clear that over here you can see that there is this layout align end @ id text view 2. So this is the id this I was talking about, and there are certain other properties. So you can use the properties. You can modify the properties and adjust the properties accordingly as you wish for a particular view. Over here we have the text view, as we have dropped the text view over here. So this is the second text view which we are using, which we have plotted upon our this particular activity. And you can see that the relative, there is a particular layout mentioned. It is the relative layout, and it is the so relative layout, and there are two text views over here. One is the text view new text, and the second is the text view this hello world. So this text view 2 is hello world, and this was by default, and then there was this text view which was a new text. So these are the two text views which are there. So first of all, let's talk about the layout, what a layout basically is. So and about these particular properties of the components, or in this particular case we can say that we are going to talk about the properties of this particular views. So actually this is a view. So if you want to go through the details, then what we can do is that we can just go to the text view of this particular content underscore main.xml file, and here we can see that the components which are there, or the views which are there, placed upon our particular this activity. So you can see that there is a text view over here. If you see, we have a text view, and it has a certain layout width, wrap content, and it has a layout height. So all these actually what happens is that this is for the text view, as I've shown you that this text view is the text view which we have drag and dropped. So this was the new text, and the name over here is the text view. So what happens is that the ID which we are going to use for this particular text view is the text view. So you can see that in the first text view, which was by default over there, placed over there. So the ID of that particular text view is the text view 2. So you can see that it is mentioned that @ +id / text view 2. So this is the way we assign an ID to a particular view. Over here the view is the text view which we have dropped, and the ID which we have given is the text view 2, and the text which we have assigned to it is the hello world, so it is the text. And when we say that the layout width, so actually first of all we must know that what a layout basically is. So this is the relative layout. I would strongly recommend you to go through the video of the swing in which I have taught you about the layouts. But just in case if you have not gone through that particular video in which I've told you about the layouts in the Java, so that you need not panic in that particular case, because I'm going to briefly discuss the layout over here also. So the main thing is that if you want to create a particular application and you are working on a particular activity, you want to position the different views, that is the components, what happened in the Java. We have this visual guide to the layout managers. So what happens is that if we want to position our components, suppose if there is a particular frame in Java in which we want to position our buttons like this, then we use the border layout. The box layout lays down the components in this particular fashion. You can see that the border layout, first of all, it is placing the components on the top, on the bottom, on the left, on the right, and in the middle. So this is the way how the border layout works. The box layout works in this particular fashion. The card layout places the components in this fashion, and flow layout. So flow layout, one after the other in a flow. The grid back layout, so it could be vertical as well as the horizontal, and the grid back layout. So and there is the grid layout, and the group layout, spring layout. So all this we have discussed in the video in swing development, and I've told you about the layout manager. So in addition, if you want to know specifically about the layouts in the Android, then you can see that that there are several layouts in Android also. So what happens is that there is a linear layout. So the linear layout can position the things vertically, or it can position the things horizontally. So linear layout is layout which, if you want to place the components one after the other, horizontally or vertically, then you use the linear layout. So as you can see, that what happens is that we are using the linear layout over here in this particular example, and what happens is that the layout width is match parent. So what match parent does, actually match parent will allocate the space or the width, that is of the activity. The activity is the parent over here, on which we are using these views. Actually these what I was explaining was that like over here we have this button. So button, in Java we call all these button and radio button, etc., text field, text area, etc., as the components. So for that, if you want, I will just search it over Google. So different components in Java. So you can see that what are the GUI components actually, would be a better term. So let's open a few sites and recall the things which were told. So these were the different components, like the button checkboxes, the radio button, color chooser, combo boxes, the dialog boxes. All these are the components, the frames, the internal frames, the labels, the list, the menus, the panels, the root panes. Some are the container components. Some are not in the container, and they are the individual components that are dropped upon. So if you see that the button is the J button, it is a component. So like this, J text field, if you want to place a text field like this, so this is also a component. and this is uh, a checkbox, so you can have different options and you can select, you can check them. uh, and the radio button, if you want to select a particular option out of several, the round boxes are there around this, and you can choose a particular out of them. So these were the called the components in case of the Java programming. Like this one is called the JCombo box, and in Android we have this called as views. So if you want, then you can search about the views in Android. So views in Android. So what happens is that actually view is a class, and all these components, or in this particular case we can say that the views um, are the extended versions of this particular class. So you have the so you have the views, like over here we have the analog clock, the image view, the keyboard view, the media router button, etc., the progress bar, the space, and the surface view, all these text view, texture view, view group, and view stub, etc. So all these are the views. So you can set the properties, and as I've told you that you can use the different so button over here is a view, like we had the component in case of swing. So button over here will be called a view, and if we have several buttons, or if we have several views over a particular activity, then we have this different IDs for those particular views, so that we can identify them, and we can use and communicate with them in our Java coding. So if we have this layout width, and we say that wrap content, so what happens is that it would wrap up the width of this particular button equal to the content which it will have. So in this particular case, as you can see, that when we were working, we had the same sort of lines that match parent. So what happens is that we first of all, by default, there is this relative layout which is being used, and we can also use the linear layout and different other layouts in Android also. Like if we want, then I'm also searching for those. Like we have the linear layout in Android. Let's see. So this is the linear layout. Let's see. So in this particular case, the components will be placed like this, one after the other, and then they are not placed vertically, so they are placed horizontally. So the orientation is the horizontal. Right now we can also set up the orientation to vertical, and if we want, we can also set the weight also. This will also be covered. And like in this particular way, first of all, we are having a layout, and then we are having different components. So we are placing the components on the particular layout we have chosen, so that the components are placed in the fashion the layout actually positions. So what happens is that the positioning is done according to the layout. In addition, the size and the width, the padding, all these things, and the orientation, all these things are decided with the help of the layout. So first of all, like here I've searched for the linear layout. Similarly, we have the relative layout. We can also search for the relative layout over here. Let's see that what the relative layout is, and relative layout. Let's see that what it is. And if you go to this, you will find that in relative layout what happens is that the positioning of the components is in this particular fashion. So one is related to the other. If you want that this component should be placed to the right of this particular component, or in Android we must say that this particular view to be placed to the right of this particular view, and you want that this to be placed at the bottom of this particular view, then all this can be done. Means the relative positioning of the components can be done by using the relative layout. So as it has been described, that is a view group. So you can see that it is a view group. So it is a view group because we are placing different views over this layout that displays child views in relative positions. The position of each view can be specified as relative to sibling elements such as the left of or bottom or below another view, a relative parent, a relative layout area, and to the bottom, left or center. So positioning views, so we can have that layout align parent top. So if we have this, then it will be aligned to the top of the parent, and if we say that center vertical, so it will be vertical and centered. So the layout below and the layout to right of. So if you want to position in a particular view at the right of some particular other view, so this is the way the relative layout works. Actually this particular file over here is having first of all, it is having the layout. So we are by default and the IDE is using the IDE over here is using the relative layout, and then the positioning of the components is which we are going to place over, or the views which we are going to place over this view group would be done accordingly as decided by our layout. So we will have this text view, and the ID, the unique ID which is assigned to this particular text view is text view 2. In the same way, we have this particular the text view with the ID text view, and the text assigned is the new text. So you can see that there is all the stuff about the components and the data which it has. So now, like we have the wrap content, it is going to wrap throughout the content, and if we have if we want it to be related to the parent, then we can say that match parent, but over here if we want to wrap it according to the content, so we can use the wrap content. And in the same way, so the layout is ending over here. We are just having the two components over here, means two views over here, the text views which we have placed. So if we go through this particular activity main, so you can see that there are actually a few other things which we are not actually seeing right now, but you can see that there is this thing, this bar over here, which is by default you can see over here, so placed over here. So this is the toolbar, so it is having the ID toolbar, and it is also the match parent. It is matching the width of the parent, and the height is attribute action bar size. So color is the primary background color. So in this way we are assigning the attributes to its properties. In a similar way, we have the floating action button. So means all these are there in the layout. So app bar layout also. So now what we can do is that first of all, the view which I just placed, I'm just going to delete that view. So for that reason, I'm going to just click the delete button over here, and I'm going to get back to the original blank activity that appeared by default. And now I'm going to describe or discuss about this particular main activity.java file. So what happens is that as I've told that the main activity.class extends the activity class, but over here you can see that in this particular API version we have the app compact activity. So this activity is also an extended version of the activity class, and by default the activities now extend this app compact activity. So you can see that we are actually overriding the onCreate method. So onCreate method is a method which is there existing in the app compact activity. So we are going to override this. So as we wish to override this particular method, onCreate method. So actually there is a particular state of the instance. So what happens is that at a particular time a particular state of an instance is saved, and onCreate that particular state of the instance is passed in order to get the actual state of the activity which was there at the end when we used it previously, and set content view. So this is the main thing. You can see that set content view. So the content view over here would be set. So you can see that this particular view means over here the set content view is taking r.layout.activity_main as a parameter. So we are passing this particular r.layout.activity_main. So if you see that this is the resource this is the resource subdirectory under the app directory, and in this particular subdirectory there is this particular layout directory, and in this particular subdirectory the layout subdirectory we have this activity_main.xml and content_main.xml. So what this content view is doing is that it is setting the view of the activity to this particular the XML file, the activity_main.xml, which we were seeing earlier over here. So this particular Java main activity is going to set the layout to the activity_main.xml file. Now what happens is that there is a toolbar. So we want that it should be recognized, the toolbar should be recognized, so that if we want to interact with the toolbar, then there is no problem for us to do so. So what we need is that we are just first of all we are finding this particular toolbar. So this is we are going to find it by r.id.toolbar. So in order to recognize this particular toolbar, if we have toolbar in the XML file, then we need to find that particular toolbar. So we are going to search for that particular toolbar by its ID. So it is under the r.id.toolbar. So this is the r.id in the activity_main. You can see that there is this particular toolbar, and this particular toolbar ID is the toolbar. So we are talking about this particular toolbar. Okay, so suppose so we are just typecasting it to the toolbar, and now we are referring it with the name toolbar. Okay, so set support action bar. So now we have this action bar, and we are passing toolbar. All this I will explain later, so some of the things you might have understood till now, and there is this option menu that is there already existing, and the option item selected, menu item. So all these things are created by default, but we do not discuss about these things because that detail is not needed right now. But let's move on and now create something and modify something and have the code and feel of developing an app. Okay, but prior to that, let's see that by default what will appear if we are going to run this particular application. So actually we have in this particular see that AVD manager, we have this particular AVD. So what this particular AVD does is that it is a virtual Android device. So this AVD manager we can use to create different AVDs. That is the virtual devices, Android devices we can create. I've created over here. I created two virtual Android devices. One is the Nexus 4 and one is the Nexus 5. So Nexus 5 is using the API 21 and Nexus 4 is using the API 23. Um, so I don't need to run the application which is created by loading it to my device, but in fact I can execute that application in this particular virtual device. So if you wish, then you can create a new virtual Android device, and it is quite easy. Just you need to click where I clicked so like over here, create a virtual device, and then there are several options. If you want Nexus 1, you can click over here and next and so on. So this is not a very troublesome task. Actually I'm not going to create any new virtual device, but just in order to tell you all that how this works, I was going through that. Okay, now let's see that if we are going to run this particular project that has been created by default, then what is going to happen. So let's run. Okay, so from here we are going to run this. Let's see that what happens now. So it is saying that okay, let's run it as an app. So it is asking me that if I want it to be running over the Nexus 4 virtual device that is using the API 23, or else if I wish, I can also run this particular application on Nexus 5 virtual device which I have created. So actually when we run this particular project, then the AVD is starting, and the package which is going to be created is the .apk package. So what happens is that the .apk package is the package of the application, and it is the package which we need to transfer over the internet onto the Google Play Store, or we can also transfer it directly to our mobile phones if we wish, and then we can execute them on our mobile phones, and we can use those particular applications then. So this is the Gradle build running. So what Gradle does is that Gradle is going to build in the APK. So it will take quite a bit of time. So I'm just pausing it because it actually takes a bit of time more as expected, because the overall so this process is quite heavy. So let's pause it for a particular time. So now we can see that this particular application is running on this particular virtual device, and there is this hello world written, but it is so simple and not sounding too good. You can see that this was something which I was trying to tell that, but we're not going in detail for all this, and we are going to go back to the code. So let's first of all go back to our code. So actually it has taken too much of the space. So actually what should I do is that I'm just going to double click over here to increase its size now. So okay, So I was telling you that this particular set content view is going to describe that what the particular activity is going to display. So r.layout.activity underscore main is the XML which it is going to display. So now let's add upon certain components and see that how we can interact with those components in our Java code. So now let's drag and drop upon certain components as we had this particular text view. Let's first of all delete this particular text view. Okay, actually there is certain rendering problem, so need to correct those things also. So first of all, let's delete this which was there by default, and now I'm going to place up a multi-text line over here so that we can have multiple lines of the text. Let it be positioned somewhere. Sorry. Okay, I will adjust the position. So I've deleted this particular hello text which was there by default, and I've just placed multi-line text over here. So I'm going to use this particular multi-line text. So as you can see that the width of this particular field is not matching its parent. So this multi-line text needs to be as wide as this particular parent width. So for that reason, what we can do is that we can go to the text view over here, and we can see that there is this edit text which is appearing over here, and the width is wrap content, but we can actually change it to the match parent. So I'm just copying it over from here, and Control C, and let it match to its parent. Okay, now let's see that it's working fine or not, and go to the design view. You can see now that its size is its width is matching to its parent. So we can actually also write fill parent instead of the match parent, and its work is also the same as the match parent. So you can see that hopefully this is working in the same way. Sorry, I guess that okay, it's okay now. Let's see. You can see that its width is equal to its parent. So suppose in addition we want to use the linear layout. As I've told you that we can use the linear layout to place the components either vertical or horizontal. So for that particular reason we can use the linear layout. Let's change the layout to the linear layout. So hopefully that this is so what happens is that it is now the linear layout which is being used instead of the earlier relative layout. So as we know that in addition we also need to have the orientation. So we can enter and change. So on the second number we have the orientation. So we want the vertical orientation. You can see that the IDE is too intelligent and not needing much of the efforts. So I'll just change it to the match parent. So actually commonly we use the match parent, and now we are going to modify the edit text. So in addition there are certain more attributes or the properties which we can use. Suppose if we want to change the height and we want to be adjusted accordingly, and we want to add some more components. For that reason what we can do is that let's suppose first of all we want that the text is actually there is a particular limit to the number of words that we can use we can write. So for that, what we can do is that we can limit it by using the max length attribute. So you can see over here that this is the max length, and then we need to enter over here, and we can use suppose 100 words. And now in addition, what we can do is that we can have the height adjusted. So if we want that it should occupy the whole space from top to bottom, what we can do is that we can assign it particular weight. We can have different weights. So we have this layout weight over here, and let's have it to suppose we want it to be 1. Okay, now, and in addition, one more thing we will need is that we will need to have the height adjusted to the 0 dp. So what we will do is that we are going to use the attribute for the height. Where is it gone? So but it would be the 0 dp. So actually we are changing it to the dp. So okay, we need to remove this additional. So that's okay now. In addition, I'm just adding another button, a button over here. So for that, let's see, actually should not have done this right now, because it is taking the whole weight to 1, so it is occupying the whole space. So what I can do is that for now I can just change it to suppose oh my god, it's changed its own on its own. So let's first of all drag drop a button. So that you see that the button is over here, and I can drag it over here, but it's not looking that good. You can see that the button is looking too large, because it changed it to 0.31. This one changed to 0.31. Now it is adjusting itself and taking the rest of the space. But let's now change the attributes. So let's say that the button also occupies the whole space, and for that reason, for this particular, we're not going to have the width like this, but the width would be matching the parent. So but is the match parent, and you can see that now it would be having the width equal to its parent, and then we can have the height, and we can adjust the height to wrap content, so that the rest of the space is just so wrap content. I'm using it over here, and the text over here, let it be save button. So save is over here, and the ID over here, let the ID let us change the ID to save, because this button will be used to save the file, because we are just creating a file which will have the text in it, and that text actually will be saved. As we save the file, we click on the save button, which is there beneath. So for this, we are going to remove the weight from here, and let's do it look at the genuine. Okay, so hopefully this is going to look but now, but you can see that the button is going a bit down, but if we're going to run it, okay, and let's see that was the problem, why this component is going to that a bit low, not at the top. So what I guess is that its layout margin top is 93, so we need to remove this what actually this is going to do is that margin, there is no more margin now, and so actually this let's remove this also, because we're using the vertical layout, and I guess that this will not um, needed. So let's like this. By default things we're not using, and what actually this particular layout width is doing is that it is actually um, being assigned to 1, assign a value of 1. This means that the remaining space which should be left after this particular button will be occupied by this edit text, and we've not given any weight to this particular component or the view, though we are not giving any weight to this particular button. But if in case we are going to assign a particular weight to this particular button, and in this case, as we have only two views, one is the edit text view and another is a button view in our app, so what will happen is that if I'm going to assign 1 over here and 0.5 over here, so the overall the height will be divided among these two components in a way that this component will be using 2/3 of the space, and this will be using the 1/3 of the space. That is, this component's weight is the double of that of this particular component, this particular view. So so overall it would be 1.5. So from among 1.5 it would be using 1, so 2/3 of the space would be used by this, and 1/3 would be used by this. And now let's see that it's working fine or not. Hopefully it should be working now fine. Okay, so let's go back to the text view, and let's also remove this particular paddings, because these paddings are creating trouble, because it's not working in the way I actually thought it to be working off for this particular application. So now hopefully it should be working correctly. Now you can see that the button is also visible, and it will be there at the bottom, and this would be using this. In fact, if you want to have the particular size of this particular, so what we can do is that if it is using 1, then let's allocate a weight weight of this particular component to be sorry, equal to, let's say, 1/10 of this one, so 0.1. So this would be occupying the 10 times the space occupied by this particular button. And now let's see that how is it working. Is it looking fine or not? Okay, it's looking a bit fine. Okay, not an issue actually. This is not the correct way of modifying the things. Actually, I think that I must remove this because oh sorry, because if the size of the text increases, then this might create trouble. But in this particular case, as the size is fixed, it is not going to use more than 100 words. In this particular case, it is not a problem. So let's first of all run this particular application and see that how is it working now. So let's say run, and I'm using this particular Nexus okay, OPI 23. Okay, not a problem. I will come back as soon as it starts working. Still it has not launched, but I just restarted the recording because I wanted to show you that it appears like as if it is the particular Android based smartphone, and not a particular virtual device. The way it shows messages, like it's saying that Android is upgrading and starting apps. Oh, thank God! Actually, it took too long, more than I expected it to take, because and my system already has a 6 GB of RAM, so I was expecting it to run fast, but this time it didn't work according to my expectations. Indeed, it took a lot, about 20 minutes it took this time to start this particular emulator and this particular application. And oh god, what has happened? I guess that the application is okay, it is working. It's not an issue. So you can see that we have the edit text field over here. So what we can do is that we can write, if we wish to write something over here, like we can write what we wish to write over here. So like I wish to write that hello. One second, I don't know that why is it taking so much time. I guess that it is hanged. I'm going to just restart the application once again. 1 second. So now it has started working perfectly as expected. So like I can write over here now, welcome to Indian programmer YouTube. As you know that I've limited it to 200 words. So if I'm going to write more of the content, so it is going to not write more than 100 words. Like you can see that. So let's see that hopefully the 100 will end somewhere. So it has ended now. No, it is still writing. Whatever, it will not write more than 100 words. I guess that these are 100 words, that's why it is not writing anything now. So this is the limit that has been reached. So okay, so you have understood this, and you can see that there is the save button also, which is appearing at the bottom. If I click over here, not getting anything. So the next time actually I need to tell you about the events and the event handling. So if you click upon a particular button, and one more thing, you can see that it is not appearing at the top, but it is appearing somewhere in the middle. So the reason over here needs to be identified. So so for that reason, what we need is that we need to set the gravity of the edit text to the top, and I've just changed the and just assign the gravity to the top of the edit text, and I've just rerun this application, and hopefully this time when it starts it would work perfectly the way as expected. From the top to the bottom, it should allow to write. And I can see that this is coming somewhere on the top, if you can see, although the application has not yet started, but we can see that there was a cursor which is blinking over here right now. So it is now looking perfectly the way as expected. Let's wait for a few more seconds and then start writing, so that it doesn't hang. So it is like the welcome to Indian programmer on YouTube. And Sorab. Chopra. So and in next lecture I would be teaching So as you can see that it is not writing anything more. I intend to write that in the next lecture I would be teaching how to save this particular text file. If I click over here, and then it should save somewhere, and you can see that when I click over here, then there is a message that appears, but I need to have the event handling. You can see that the thread took it this much second and that much second is appearing. So but right now if I click on this particular button, then it is not performing any action. So I need to discuss about the action that is performed when an event occurs, and the state of this button will change, and it will correspond to the code which is intended to run when this event occurs. And it is an on-click event that occurs, but that would be discussed in the next lectures, upcoming lecture. And I would also be telling you about the database connectivity to the applications. In addition, I will be telling you about the codes, the certain applications in which there would be some coding. As in this particular application, we didn't write anything at this particular portion, that is the main activity.java, but in the upcoming lectures this thing also will be taken under consideration, and we can also change and give good names to the applications. But this time this was enough, as this was the only the first application which I was trying to make for you all. So thanks for watching. Have a great day ahead. Okay.